Hello and welcome to another edition of the Medeek Truss Plugin. Today I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the new step down hip truss set and the terminal hip truss set that I've recently added to the plugin, and in doing so hopefully I can better explain some of the particulars with this particular tool. I've got here in front of me just a little small model of an office space that I'm hoping to build one of these days. I'm going to use this to demonstrate the hip truss sets. So the first thing I like to do usually is turn off the sheathing and the cladding and some of the other details so we can get right just down to the framing and use those dimensions to work off of. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the wall cladding and turn off the wall sheathing here. And let's turn off the gypsum while we're at it. And I think we have some trim as well and some windows, just unnecessary clutter right now. Okay, so now we're down to the framing. So the first thing is basically when you select a rectangular, the 3 points that define the rectangular, not profile, but outline of the roof, the first 2 points will generally determine, the span. But with the hip truss set, it will select the shortest span to span the trusses across rather than the longest span. So I don't think it really matters which way you draw it. So anyways, let's go ahead and just get started here. And we'll click the truss set icon up there. And you can see I've got quite a few here already listed, but really the only two that work, or three I guess, are the step down hip set, the terminal hip set, and the valley hip set. Now the valley hip set is for bridging across the top of the main slope of a roof, connecting a roof that's teeing into that main roof. So we've already discussed that in a previous video, but so let's start with the step down hip set. So we just go like that, hit OK, and then we go ahead and select the 3 corners that define the rectangular roof. So we'll grab this corner here, we'll grab that corner there, and then we just stretch across here, and you can see that it'll show you the outline of the hip truss roof while we stretch it out. So we'll get the 3rd point over here on this corner, and actually it can be anywhere on this line, or actually on the other corner, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now let me go through some of the menu items here that first pop up. Basically we can select the main or common truss type, and you can see you've pretty much got the full selection of truss types that you can select from. In this case we'll just stay with the Fink, which is pretty standard for this span. We've got a 24-foot span. The top chord pitch, let's go ahead and change that to 5. And by the way, in the global settings you can change this to an angle if you would rather work in angles than in a pitch. And in the metric version, when you have a metric template, it'll automatically go to an angle. Okay, girder plies. So girder plies are basically the number of truss plies at the girder point. To show you what that means, let's go ahead and just select 2, and then I'll show you what that means. And this is the girder setback. So this is the setback, the number of feet from the end of the roof that the girder will be sitting at. And 6 feet and 8 feet is pretty typical for most truss sets. So we'll just stick with the 6 feet. And of course the overhang is 12 inches. You can set that to wherever you like. That's the overhang of the roof all the way around. There is no right or left overhang. There's just one overhang. And then here you can independently set the truss, the top chord, the bottom chord, and the web sizes. So if you typically that's going to be 2x4 lumber, so 3.5 inches for the depth of the top chord, 3.5 inches for the bottom chord, and 3.5 for the web. But again, you can set these pretty much to whatever sizes you want. Ply thickness, that's the thickness of the lumber of the truss. 1.5 inches, standard 2x4 type lumber, 2X lumber we call it. That's pretty typical. Okay, so now we get into the more interesting stuff. So you got the drop-in purlin frame. We'll go ahead and leave that off for now, but I'm going to show you what that does once on our next go around. Open-end jacks, we'll leave that no. raised heel, we'll leave that no. And then if there is a raised heel, you put the heel height right here. So pretty much default, just leave all that and hit OK. Now it gives us the building length. And you can actually modify this value if you like. Say you keyed in the wrong value or whatever, you can always change that right here at the dialog, or just leave it as it is. It's just kind of given that for your information. Truss spacing, that's the spacing between trusses. 24 inches is pretty typical. Truncate hip set. Okay, so this particular option currently is not going to do anything, even if you select yes. And what this is intended to do is basically truncate one side of the hip set so that it can tie into another main roof. But currently this feature is not available, so just leave that as no for now. And then advanced roof options, this will bring up the advanced roof options dialog. We'll go ahead and select yes on that, and then we'll show you those options. So now we go into the advanced roof options for a hip truss set. Okay, so sheathing, yes, we're going to turn that on. You can turn off sheathing. You can specify the sheathing thickness here, 1/2 inch, 7/16, 15/32. Pretty much all your plywood and OSB standard thicknesses are here. And again, in the metric version, you're it's more open-ended. It just kind of gives you input where you can put in any size you like. So let's just go ahead with 1/2 inch. That's fine. And subfascia, yes, that's the fascia board, and generally that's a 2x6 or 2x8 or something of that nature. But and you can turn that off if you like. This will set the way the fascia ties to the tail of the truss, so whether it's flush, bevel, or drop. And I probably should demonstrate that, but I don't know if I'll go into much detail on that right now. But drop is pretty typical. There's the other 3 options as well, though. Heel blocking, there's basically 3 or 2 inputs here for that. Currently the heel blocking option is not configured and is not active, even though you'll notice that it is available for pretty much every truss type, but it's still not been implemented. So this option, just leave it as it is. Leave this orientation of the heel blocking as it is, vertical. Even if you change those, it's not going to do anything. They're basically not implemented yet. Soffit cut, what that will do is if you have a thick a rafter or a thick top truss cord that's overhanging and is extending into the soffit space, and you want to trim that, this feature will allow you to trim that, and you can see that you can make it flush, or you can have it offset a certain amount. We're not going to go into that right today. We're going to deal more specifically just with the more of the features of the hip set itself, rather than the tail treatment of the top cord. So, and then roof cladding, yes, we'll turn that on. And then the roof cladding thickness, in this dialog it's not set here, but you can set the roof cladding material and the thickness within the global settings, and I'll show that to you in a few minutes here. And then the ceiling gypsum, you can actually turn this on. This will bring up gypsum, or the the ceiling sheetrock dialog. Let's go ahead and turn that on just to see what happens there. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and OK. And now the ceiling gypsum dialog pops up. If you had selected no, this dialog would not have come up. And you can set the wall inset, you can set the thickness. Let's go ahead and do 5/8 just to see the difference. And you can actually do ceiling battens, batten height, batten width, batten spacing, but we're going to leave that option off. Typically I don't see that very often locally here with roofs, but I mean it is a feature that's there for people that want to use ceiling battens. So we'll hit OK, and there's your roof. Okay, so let's take, now of course it just looks like any other hip roof with rafters or however else you want to construct it. So let's go ahead and turn off the roof cladding and the roof sheathing over here. So turn off that roof cladding. And by the way, you can see the sheathing is plywood rather than OSB. That setting is set in the global settings, where you can set what material you want to use. So let's go ahead and turn off the roof sheathing. Okay, so here's what we have. So this is a typical step-down hip set, and as you can see, you start with common trusses, and you can see we've got the plates shown as well, but you don't have plates shown throughout the rest of the truss hip set, and the reason is because I haven't implemented plates yet, so you're not going to get them showing, but at some point, you know, if I get enough requests, I'll probably go ahead and add plates, so that, you know, that's fully configured as well. But it's not, let's say it's just not hot on the list right now, so it's something on the to-do list. Okay, and then basically with step down, of course, once you get to the ridge apex here, then you start stepping down, and you can see we have 2 step down trusses that are, well, actually 3, of course, because if you include the girders, but as you can see, the configuration of them changes as they step down, and that's just part of the algorithm that creates these step down trusses. And the interesting thing is, of course, is if you draw a line from the center of that right there, right down to that corner, you're going to see that the roof plane, that is the roof plane, of course, and everything lines up nicely on that, as it should. So these corners line up, and everything is as it should be. So that was very important to me, to make sure these roof planes are exactly perfect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this hip set. So girders, right. You've got the double girder, like we selected in our first option menu. And if you select a single girder, you're only going to get 2 plies here, or 1 ply, sorry, instead of 2. Now, this is not a energy heel or raised heel truss type, but if we select a raised heel, it will you know, raise up all of these jack trusses and corner jacks and hip jacks. So these are what are called the end jacks. These row of little mono trusses along here on the end, and then what you got here along on this each corner is what we call hip jack. And then you also have the corner jacks, which fill in and attach to the hip jack. So yeah, it's quite a complicated little truss set here. And then here's our fascia board, and you can see that because the fascias have to meet up, you're only going to have one overhang, and the overhang is going to be the same all the way around. So let's go ahead and just leave off. If we create a truss set, you know, with our cladding and our sheathing turned off, it's still going to create, you know, that sheathing and cladding, but it just won't be visible until we turn it back on. So let's go ahead and delete this, and we're going to go ahead and create a raised heel step down hip truss set. So let's go ahead and click again, click our 3 points, okay, and this time around let's go ahead and add a drop-in purlin frame. Let's go ahead and open up the jacks, and that will only open up the end jacks, not all of the jacks. And let's go ahead and throw in a 24-inch raised heel, and then we'll just go ahead and select default for everything else, and leave the gypsum there. Oh, and you note that the gypsum did not show up. Well, it's because I actually turned off the gypsum layer. So if we turn on the gypsum layer, you're going to see that the ceiling gypsum is actually part of the wall gypsum layer, and it is now showing, and so that's why it didn't show initially when I did the first one. Okay, so you can see the ceiling gypsum is there, and it is created. So I'm going to turn that back off so we can actually look at the trusses a little more in detail. So now what we've got is the same Fink common truss, but now we've gone with a 24-inch raised heel, and as you can see, this truss looks different, as it should. So I'm just going to grab a copy of it and pull it out over here so you can take a look at it, and there's your raised heel. And of course you can go with any raised heel, it doesn't have to be 24 inches. And if it's low enough, it'll go to what's called the slider configuration, and if it's even lower than that, it'll go to what's called the heel web configuration. And the step down jack trusses will adjust accordingly. So let's take a little closer look here. It gets a little bit interesting. First thing you'll notice is, well, there's open end jacks. Notice that it's not closed right here. There's a web missing there. So instead of having a web that closes out the truss profile, it's now just open. You can see also that this has a raised heel at the bearing point here, and a raised heel with the corner jacks and the hip jack as well. So there's your raised heel. And the step down trusses, they've gone to a vertical raised heel, and you can see that the configuration of the raised heel kind of depends upon the span here, and that dictates, you know, how this strut comes out. But anyways, that's all part of the algorithm that determines how to frame out that step down truss. And then the other interesting thing you'll notice is we have what's called this drop-in purlin frame, and so this actually sits on top of the trusses, and the top chord hip right here, what I called it, the flat section of the roof, is dropped down accordingly so that you can fit that purlin frame in there. And also the girder itself has a drop top chord, so you can inset in this frame. And the nice thing is the frame, of course, is aligned so that it matches exactly with the roof planes. So everything is as it should be. So that is a drop-in purlin frame, and there's two of them. And then this is, of course, these are components, so if you change this one changes, and if you change this over here, then the corresponding hip truss on this side will also change. So try to make this as logical as possible. Okay, so there's a full kind of introduction to a step-down hip truss. Sorry, it's a long word. Step-down hip truss set. Okay, let's go ahead and delete that one. And now we're going to try a terminal hip set. And that's the second option. So very similar to the step down. Go ahead, throw our 3 points in. Now go ahead and select that point. And typically this style of hip set is not used except in very short spans, so 18, maybe 20 feet at most. But here we're doing 24 feet, so usually you wouldn't actually use it in this application, but it's there, and if you need it or want it, you can use it. Now you notice all the settings reset, and basically when you change hip sets, it's going to start with the default settings, and that's fine. We will just change this back up. Let's go with a 6 by 12 pitch. Girder plies, just leave that at single, and we'll just kind of leave this all as it is. And same thing here. Let's just leave all the options as they are. Okay. So now we've got a slightly different configuration of a hip set, and you'll notice right away that the girder truss is missing, and there was no option for girder setbacks or girder plies. And the reason being, of course, is that there is no girder. Well, there is a girder, I guess, but it's this truss. Well, actually, I take that back. You'll notice that there was the option for girder plies. So if you set that to 2, then this truss will be doubled up. In fact, let's try that right now just to show you. So let's delete that, go back, and go ahead and recreate this guy. And it should have our previous settings, and it does. Let's go with 2 ply on that. I guess the thing what I was trying to say was that the purlin frame, it gives you no option for a purlin frame, a drop-in frame, and that's because there is no option for that in this type of truss set. So hit OK, hit OK, hit OK. Okay. So there we go. You can see now that you have the girder truss, which is really the first common truss at each end, is now doubled up. But there is no girder hip truss. It's basically the first common truss at each end. And really there only is one end jack, and that's right in the center, and you can switch that to an open end if you want and delete that web. And then the rest are really corner jacks, and they all bear on the what's called the hip jack truss, which is on each corner. And this all comes and ties into the first common truss. And so the reason why that you typically don't use this truss set for large spans is because all of this weight is being concentrated at this one spot on the first common truss, and so it tends to not, the numbers just don't work out when you get to too large of spans. Okay, so not much to say about that other than, you know, it's a different configuration and it's used for shorter spans. Let's go ahead and go with a raised heel on that real quick, and just to show you what that looks like. Okay, let's go raised heel, yes, and let's just go with a, okay, 24, let's go 18, what the heck. Change it up a little bit. Okay, so again, raised heel. And you can see that now we've got a raised heel all the way around, and the truss is fully configured. And let's turn on our roof cladding and roof sheathing. And also just wanted to point out the roof framing, if you turn that layer off, I'm using, and you can set up layers or turn them on or off, you know, at your disposal in the global settings, but if you turn off the roof framing, you can see the way the fascia board disappears. So I've tried to organize everything on the appropriate layers to keep things in a logical order as as possible. So, but yeah, there's okay, so we'll turn on that, and we'll turn on the roof cladding, and let's turn on the wall gypsum. I think I might have turned the wall gypsum. I didn't turn the wall gypsum on, did I, when I created it? That's fine. Anyway, so basically in a nutshell, we've gone ahead and we've shown you basically what. Now, of course, the sheathing doesn't extend all the way up, but that would have to be done with the wall plugin, which is still a work in progress. So, anyways, that's the basics for a step-down truss set. Now, I'm working on a more complicated version now where we can deal with, you know, polygon outlines of roofs where it gets much more complicated, but it's still a work in progress. Here's another building, for example, that I drew recently just to test it out, and you can see this is a much larger roof with a different truss configured as the common truss, but a big drop-in purlin frame. But really it's no different. It's a step-down hip truss set, and it looks pretty much the same with a raised heel. And the beauty is now, instead of spending hours trying to build this thing, within a matter of seconds you've got yourself a fully framed out hip truss roof. And that's the whole idea behind this plugin, is to speed things up. So anyways, please feel free to email me with any questions or comments or corrections, and I'm always open to suggestion as far as what features to add or fix with these plugins. And honestly, that drives probably about 95% of what I do with these plugins. So I appreciate your watching this video, and hopefully we'll come out with another episode pretty soon. Thank you.